of medical practitioners. That is different in the aging field, and where it's often just the original proponents who keep pushing these things. Now, the thing that I find really frustrating are the more extreme views, and I'm afraid in California they're very popular, and that are these things like cryonics, where you freeze bodies or even brains and, assume that science is going to progress at some point and then resurrect these people. I think there's no basis for that at all today.
Part of me thinks that we're so scared of death, right? Because what you just explained there sounds very logical. If someone is presenting a claim and maybe they've studied something, but they own a company selling you something, then there should be a level of healthy skepticism where you, as a consumer, as someone that is being exposed to that information, think, has that finding been replicated? And are independent bodies also recommending that intervention? Exactly. That makes total sense, right? But part of me thinks when it comes to longevity and aging, it's so exciting. And I think when you get someone who jumps on a podcast that can speak very well, or a brand that has incredible branding, I think people overlook that and think, this is cutting edge. This is ahead of the government and other recommendations that might come. And time is not on my side.
Exactly.
So I'm going to be drawn in by this compelling story that there is something I can do right now that will slow my rate of aging or reverse it.
Oh, absolutely. And, we saw this earlier with cancer treatments. There were, I think in California again, there were people recommending Laetrile, these extracts from apricot pits or something. It turned out to have no real basis, but there were people, it wasn't accepted treatment here, so they would go off to other countries. I think some of them went to Mexico to get these treatments. It's because when you're faced with aging and death, or in cancer, you're faced with death directly, people are desperate because we have evolved to want to be alive. And, we don't want to stop existing. Those of us who are alive don't want to stop existing. And so I think this is a natural worry. And the other real worry is that as we get older, we don't want to be helpless, decrepit. So anything that promises health in old age and possibly extension of life itself, people are more predisposed to believe that. And that's just human nature. And I wouldn't say these people are necessarily exploiting it. Some of them actually, I think, believe in their claims. But it creates this extremely hyped field.
Right, and a field where the commercialization is ahead of the science.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a lot of money in it. I'll give you an example again from California. So scientists at Stanford found something that had been previously suspected, but they were the first people to find that if you take blood from a young animal, young rat, and perfuse it into an older rat by connecting the two animals, the old rat appeared to benefit from the young blood. And contrary-wise, the young animal suffered from the blood of the old animal. And initially, it wasn't completely clear whether it's because they were connected and, maybe the young animal was filtering the old blood. It wasn't necessarily just the young blood, but they did transfusions of animals which were not connected and showed that actually there were factors in blood. And oddly, in that experiment, it turned out that old blood is more harmful to young animals than young blood is beneficial to older animals, okay? But nevertheless, it means there are factors that change as we age in blood. And this is and some of these factors, promote growth of neurons, other kinds of effects. And So this is a very legitimate field of inquiry, and the original scientists have been extremely careful about what they claim. But those scientists write that they got, somewhat creepy phone calls as soon as they, published their findings. And not long afterwards, companies would sprout up which would offer to provide blood transfusions. In other words, they would collect blood from young donors and presumably give it to rich people who wanted to benefit.
Have you come across Brian Johnson?
So Brian Johnson's an interesting case. So I actually don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's honestly trying to live as long as possible and age as slowly as possible. I would say he's way out there. He spends about $2 million a year on longevity aspects for his life, collecting data, doing this and that and the other treatment. And he, for a while, actually had a sort of three-way blood transfusion, kept it all in the family between his son, father, where he would get blood from his son and then also donate blood to his father. And I think after a while, he also is a data freak, so he measures all sorts of biomarkers, and I think he felt it wasn't having much effect, and he stopped. I believe he said that, but he still believes in the principle, and of course he's right. There are these experiments which suggest there's something in blood that changes as we get older, and there are factors that might do something. But this is a case again where people have jumped the gun, and one of these companies was shut down by the FDA and then was resurrected under a different name. And the CEO said, well, the trouble with clinical trials is that they take too long. Now, think of the absurdity of this. What they're saying is we're not going to bother taking the time to see if this thing actually works, finding out what the optimal dose is, whether it's efficacious, whether it has side effects, because our customers don't want to wait. And that's precisely what you were saying, which is people will often jump the gun